not to disparage little people at all. They're a bunch of fine people who contribute to society in wonderful ways, despite their lack of height. Just like, well, not unlike this game, the Dwarves from King Arts. It's developed on the Unity engine. You can pick it up for around $40 to $50, especially if you're in Canada, because fuck you, Canada. What is it? Based on the eponymous best-selling novel by Markus Heitz, The Dwarf is a fantasy role-playing game with a strong story and tactically challenging real-time battles. So let's pull out our appropriately sized chairs because it's time to cue the chairquisition. 1 chair means that it's garbage. 2 chairs means that it's meh. 3 chairs means that it's pretty good. 4 chairs means that it's awesome. We also got our categories Odoo, mixed with working, shiny sounds, controls, and fun. So let's kick this off. Then nobody tosses a dwarf, but how did it make with the working?
Over here on the Ubuntu 1604 LT ass box of business 8150 with a 980 powered, displayed at UHD, which I do not believe was an option in this game, but I definitely played it at 1080p. Everything ran pretty good. The only technical issue I had, which you don't normally get to say this with a Unity title, I like being able to say this more and more. Your FERPs count with the 980, somewhere between 50 and 90, depending on what corner of the map or area you were looking at. The only thing I really am going to ding it a chair for is you can't Alt-Tab out of this fucker. At least on XFCE, it did not want to do that with separate X screens because your cursor state is that gold triangle thing. I was like, this is bullshit. All right, so if I want to do anything other than play this game, I have to close it, which is irritating. But outside of that, I liked it. Pretty decent joint, and it's going to get a pretty decent score out of the gate.
Yeah, add another to the list of Unity games you can't play at UHD. This thing does not scale well. You get Morty. You get about 30 frames a second when you're running this at UHD with everything on fantastic. Knock that down to 1080p, and I'm averaging on the i7 6700K with the GTX 980 on Fedora 2464-bit at around anywhere from 80 to 127 frames a second. When you're recording, that goes down from anywhere to 60 to 70 frames a second, which is actually pretty good, all things considered. I too am on XFCE4 and am running separate X sessions, separate X screens, and I was able to Alt-Tab out of this, so I think Ben is smoking a bit of the dwarf PCP. This gets 4 chairs.
Yeah, on my end, it wouldn't actually let me Alt-Tab. I already know the trick for that one. You hit Shift-Tab first, so the Steam overlay opens, and then you just take the cursor and you go whatever you want to go. It works fine. So yeah, it doesn't get dinged chairs for that one.
It doesn't get dinged a chair by forcing you to run Steam overlay?
No.
Okay.
Because it also gives me, the Steam overlay also gives me the FERPs, and in this game, it's one of those things that never ceases to amaze me. So whenever I see a Unity game running, even when it dips, it only dips into like the 70s. It's constantly running high 80s, 90s, 100s. Really, really awesome. Especially one which admittedly kind of looks very, very good like the Dwarves do. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so on the FX 8370E overclocked at 4.2 gigahertz and the GTX 1080 on the Ubuntu Mates 1604, it gets 4 chairs.
All right, well, that's 3 chairs for Mixed with Working. I'm next to Shiny and Sounds. Ben, did it glisten like dwarven jewels and gold?
My precious. Oh, wait, that's a different middle, or wait, something, I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell because we're talking about Dwarves, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at the Kickstarter pre-alpha trailer, which I did, I went back, it looks exactly the same as the finished game does. And I was like, okay, where did things go? You know, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but it makes one wonder where that 310,000 wet stinky caches really went to. The graphics, however, look spot on for a title released in 2006. This is nothing terribly amazing, but again, not a bad thing, but don't expect anything to blow you away. It's well done. It's competently done, but it's definitely done on a $300,000 budget. The animation rigging, cutscenes, they're all a bit of all right. The voice work, surprisingly passable. And just kind of like as an aside to that, the Dutch narrator is best narrator. I'm sorry, I had to flip that, and it's a dude, and I was like, oh, I like that better. I like his sound. However, you know, It's all for naught since a lot of this game, because there are 3D sections, you run around and you have your combat sections, but there's a big chunk of it where you're just spent dealing with that stupid monkey overworld map. And that bored me all the way to 2 chairs.
Yeah, so Hansi, lead singer of Blind Guardians, Hansi Kirsch, I love you. I will always love you, and I will forever want to have your man babies. But that song that you wrote for their credits is garbage. Oh my god, it's terrible. I sat and watched the entire credit sequence because I'm a Blind Guardian fanboy. To the same level that Ven is a Typo Negative fanboy, I'm a Blind Guardian fanboy. And holy shit, did you have like a checklist of bullet points from like the book? Like, we need to talk about these things. They're made of stone, blah, blah, blah. Oh shit, we're out of things to say about these dwarves. Well, better loop to the beginning of the list. Oh man. But that's neither here nor there. The only reason I care about this game is because Blind Guardian did music for it, and now I'm very much disappointed. But the game itself looks good. The cinematic stuff looks about as good as the cinematic stuff from Total Warhammer, which is less of a compliment on this game and more of an insult towards Total Warhammer because they couldn't do with a several $1 million budget what these guys did with a $300,000 budget. That's kind of bad. The game also has this really weird tendency in game to switch between like these pre-rendered cutscenes and the in-game stuff, and it'll do it in this very random sense. So it's super jarring, especially when you go from like the really highly detailed 3D animated models to the in-game stuff. The in-game stuff is not all that bad. It's fairly competently done. Like again, it looks better than Total Warhammer, which is again not. Again, that's more shitting on Total Warhammer than complimenting this game, but nonetheless, it's competently done. The voice acting is okay. I like the Helen Mirren-esque narrator. I don't like being stuck listening to her narrate when I can read faster than she can talk. The backgrounds and the maps are all very well done. They remind me a lot of Pillars of Eternity in terms of the design and attention to detail. So that's good. It gets 3 chairs because it is good looking. Yes. I
did actually run into a glitch, and you can see it in the video footage. There's this weird flickering in the UI. I didn't think it was there at first. At least I don't remember seeing it when I first started the game. It just kind of started happening, or I started noticing it at one point. And this happens in both Mate and KDE, regardless of whichever compositor options I use. It doesn't really break anything. It's just very aesthetic. And speaking of aesthetics, this is a very good looking game. They went for heavily stylized characters, but compensated a little bit by having very realistic looking textures for both the characters / clothing and the teeny tiny bits of the world you get to see up close. It's a shame, like Ben and Jordan already mentioned, most of the game, the actual game app happens in text form, and you do most of the exploration from the world map. But, those bits that you actually get to see are very good looking and good sounding. Like Jordan already mentioned, the lyrics for the intro credits song are not very good. Thankfully, they're mostly absent throughout the game. The background music, which accompanies most of the action scenes, and the eerie, soft music when you're exploring a creepy place, those are really well done. Bonus points for the awesome voice acting as well. 3 chairs.
All right, well, that's 2 chairs for Shani and Sons. Up next is Control. What did you think, Fun?
It's pretty much your standard bog standard, that is. Real-time strategy controls. Nothing to write home about. They, air quote, work. Kind of logically sort of laid out. There's not a whole lot to control with this, but you know what? It's 2017, Brad. And you know what? If you don't have rebindable controls in 2017, minus 2 chairs off the bat from me at least. Now, I guess it is possible to use your controller, or an Exclone controller, or your PS, what the fuck ever controller with this game, but seriously, I don't know anyone who hates themselves that much. Your controls work, but that's all they do.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I did notice that this thing had controller support. I'm interested to see how that might actually work, because it might change my opinion on it. Because at first I wasn't really sure if I liked the whole hybrid turn-based RTS thing. Transistor did it well, but that was more you can just queue up moves and then execute like a really complicated combo that you wouldn't otherwise normally be able to do. Here, not so much. 3 hours in, I'm pretty sure I hate their controls. The way the battles go, like, everything just moves around a lot, so orchestrating things can be problematic. Pedro later informed me that you really need to lean on the environment to help you in the fight. So maybe if I go back and play this a little more, I'll try that and see if I can do it. But it just bogs down to the point where they don't tell you how to play the game. They give you some general advice. Here's the buttons you press, and that's it. Look for terrain things to knock them over. Cool, yeah. Except your thing that sends people flying doesn't actually send them flying all that far. I mean, all the battles are visually interesting. They remind me a lot of the fights that we would see in, say, the Peter Jackson Hobbit movies, which I actually liked. The fight scenes, not necessarily the movie franchise. There's another video series of my problems with that could be made. That's neither here nor there. But it's a pain in the butt to control because it is just so ADD, and it's not my type of ADD, which is the problem. But I mean, that's most of the part of the game that you're spending your effort in. The rest of it, like Pedro mentioned in the previous section, is all overworld. And that is just a conventional hex crawl where you wander around, get random encounters. You got to make sure that you have enough food or else you start starving. It's done competently enough. But, oh, God, that battle system is not something I am a fan of. So you get 2 chairs for that.
Yeah, you may remember that other game about dwarves that we covered a while back. This game, The Dwarves, is what would have come out of We Are the Dwarves if the devs of that game had taken what we set to heart and fixed the game instead of, doing nothing at all, like they did. The combat in The Dwarves specifically manages to be technical and still feel very impactful. Or meaty, as some people like to call it. If one of the dwarves does one of their special attacks, you'll see enemies get squished and blood sprays everywhere. Or there'll be a bunch of ragdoll orc bodies flying all over the place. It's awesome. I'll admit, that's awesome. But, like Van already mentioned, controls, you can't rebind admittedly, most of the controls are mouse-driven, but you still have shortcuts for the special attacks, and they are like Q, W, E, and I'm guessing they go along on that particular line as you unlock more. I would like an option to change that, because seeing as I use the mouse on my left hand, having both of my hands really close together on, the keyboard and mouse combination doesn't really work all that well. And yeah, no, if you don't have rebindable controls for people, especially picky people like me, at this point in time, you're only going to get 2 chairs.
All right, well, that's 2 chairs for controls. Let's wrap this up with fun. Did you have fun with your dwarves, Ben?
Hey, man, no. The dwarves,
elaborate.
I mean, it opens with a nice sized battle. You just kind of get dropped into this, like, oh, all this amazing shit is going on. This is like straight up Symphony of the Night. It was like, you might get to this, but just not yet, because after you complete these bullshit battles that I don't think you could lose if you tried, it kind of starts off and you're like, oh, it's Journey Quest, and okay, you're going to go collect some food, find your axe. I shit you not, dude has an axe. And you're going to take a bag from point A to Mount Doom and fucking Mordor or wherever the hell it is. And that's when you first realize, oh, fucking look, an overworld map. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This is going to be a thing. Fuck that. Seriously, like, no joke. I mean, this gives me D&D flashbacks with that overworld map, text, oh, choose your own adventure bullshit. And that's very frightening, since I've never played D&D. Because, having my adventure fucking read out and narrated to me over static fucking text screen puts me right the fuck to sleep. Sorry. Not sorry. I noped. Right here. That's what I was like, fuck this game. But I was like, God damn it, Vin. You got to put some more time into it, though. Maybe something's going to happen. Maybe it's going to... It didn't. I really wish that this was more of a hack and slash game and not this real time with pause. Did I mention the pause? Because this game sure as fuck does. It's like, hey, you can pause battles and all that shit, and we're going to force you to use this bullshit mechanic. I know Jordan and Pedro was like, well, there's other games that use it. It's like, well, it kind of defeats the whole point of having a real time strategy type game, for me at least. I mean, this is like choose your own adventure with random encounters of 3D bullshittery. And if you really want to put, the bow on this game averages, you can just read through the other reviews on the Steam, about 8 ons of gameplay at 39.99 wet stinky caches. What's not to love, Brad? Fuck this. One chair.
All right. So I throughout the dialogue options of the game, I decided to make my dwarf a self-hating dwarf. He doesn't mention dwarves, and when prompted about it, he always changes the subject. And they make that really, really hard as the dialogue goes on, because they really, really want to talk to you about being a dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
But so this is onto the actual fun section. This is one of those games that it does a bunch of stuff right, but the core mechanic isn't really well done, and that's what really hamstrings the game. In my opinion, the combat just doesn't work, and that's where the majority of the gameplay is. Sure, there's the hex crawl element. You go from point A to point B. You go to drop into a map sometimes, and you do some investigation, and you look around, and you sometimes solve a puzzle. That's neither here nor there. But you're going to be fighting a lot of the time, and the fights just take forever. There's a lot of waiting. It feels like the developers could not decide if they wanted to make a hack and slasher, a MOBA / action RTS, or just a traditional RPG. And it feels like it's trying to pull you in all these directions, because there's a ton of micromanaging you need to do, a la some sort of action RTS. But there's leveling up, and you got to deal with some of the tactical stuff like you would in RPG. And then when you knock people down, you have to go and micromanage hitting them first. Otherwise, they're going to come back and start killing you. Because if they're on the ground, you just kill them and they die with one hit. It's really annoying. It's really tedious. And I wish they would have just picked a direction. If it was just Dawn of War style, I would be fine with that, where I could micromanage it. They set up, they start attacking, move to the next point, blah, blah, blah. Or if it were like Baldur's Gate, where it was a sort of more defined turn-based thing, where I can say, okay, initiative slots, do these things in this order, combat resolves this round, go to the next one. Or even Torchlight style, where I walk around as a bunch of alternating dwarves, like We Are the Dwarves did that a little bit better, I would say, just in terms of, hey, you can switch between these guys and they all have individual powers and you control them via hack and slash. That would be fine. Instead, you get this really, really ugly hybrid of all these various things that I feel just doesn't work and really hamstrings the game. I would actually... so it does the standard fantasy fiction thing where it tries to plot dump the world on you, and everything has a weird name, and the elves aren't actually called elves; they're the Eldarim. When the dwarves are
the elves.
They're from Grackelgard or whatever, and that stuff makes me roll my eyes, because that's what I don't care about with fantasy. I care about like the actual stories and the struggles of the character, which they actually have a decent framework for that from a story perspective. It's just I got to slog through this really non-fun gameplay, and that's why this can only get 2 chairs from me.
Yeah, me on the other hand, I liked it. If I had to find something else to rag on it, and I kind of do, I mean, that seems to be the only reason that people stick around for my teeny tiny little bits in the fun segment. No, the one thing that I can rag on it here is the adherence to the tell, don't show school of game design. And again, I'm about to start using broad strokes, so, goggles, paint suit, what have yous. I've talked about this before. I'm pretty sure I have, at least. There are 2 kinds of video game narratives. There are narratives which integrate into the gameplay and keep the word count down to a minimum and are still able to advance the story. That is the show, don't tell approach. A good example of that kind of game would be Half-Life 2. Very good example, actually. And then you have the tell, don't show approach, which is where the narrative is told to you and the gameplay is something which is... It could be related to it, but it's completely independent from it. Don't believe me? In the Dwarves, you could literally replace the entire story with a coming-of-age narrative, where a young dwarven stud who had a very sheltered upbringing going out into the world and befriending 2 other dwarven hunky boys, joining them in their quest to broaden their sexual horizons. Given
Final Fantasy 15.
Given how much of the non-combat narrative action happens solely in text form, the gameplay, which is mostly just combat, and the narrative are absolutely disjointed. That said, even though they're completely independent from one another. Both the story and the combat are good. I like them. I like them very, very much. And I like the game. And I will excuse the ludonarrative discordance. It's not dissonance, it's discordance for that simple fact. In their own way, they're well done. Even if the only thing keeping them together in the Dwarves is completely superficial. So for me, in the fun, it gets 3 chairs.
Oh, shit. I actually read through the entire Player's Handbook section on Dwarves in less time than it took for Pedro to actually go through his spiel. Anyways, that's 2 chairs for the fun segment, and we tally all that up to come up to with the final score of 2 chairs for We Are the Dwarves. Half score for half men. Final thoughts?
I gotta say this. I mean, if you really want to support King Art games, this is a hard sell, roughly 40 wet stinky freedom caches for 8 hours, 8 to 12, I guess I should say, of enjoyment. That's kind of steep, even at 70 minutes in, I am definitely like 1/8 done with the damn game. And, that kind of stings. What I'm looking forward to from King Art Games, not necessarily this game, but the next thing they have on the list, which is called Iron Harvest. That one.
Oh, that's the mech game.
Yeah, it's set in the 20s, and of course Nazi mechs, because why not? That's not a tricked out thing, is it?
Yeah, no, it isn't. And admittedly, Iron Harvest does look very good. Now, I am the one lone dissonant voice in this particular review, and I like the game. Again, the story and the gameplay are completely unrelated to one another. Yeah, sure, they cover the same topics, but it's orcs. It's dwarves fighting orcs, and dwarves not getting along with elves. It's been done before. So if you don't want to play through another one of those games, that's fine, and especially one that goes for like €40 or $40 or $50 if you live in Canada, I can totally see that. But if it ever goes down on sale and you think you might enjoy another fantasy story about dwarves, yeah, definitely pick it up.
Don't tell the elf.
Yeah.
Don't tell the elf.
Aren't you the elf then, though? Long live, tall, graceful, sparkling. Oh wait, no, that's bad.
And my
yes. Again, this game does the story thing pretty well. But again, like I maybe I would have fewer gripes with this game if they actually taught you how to play the game and utilize the systems within the game, as opposed to just sort of letting you go to the wind, especially for a highly tactical game like this. For something like Dark Souls, where it's effectively a sword fighting simulator, there's a bit of you need to get punished to learn. This is about thinking and planning and plotting and switching up your strategy relatively quickly in a real-time sense. And the gameplay, I feel, just doesn't really support it all that well. If you're a fan of the Dwarves book series, this might also be something you want to pick up. And if you're a fan of Blind Guardian, like I am, don't get this game because Blind Guardian's in it. It's not.